There's another warning today that the cladding scandal will turn out to be a lot more expensive than anyone first thought. Managing agents, the people who look after the blocks of flats, have done a big survey, and they've found that quite apart from the cladding, other safety defects will cost on average £25,000 per flat. Now that's on top of an average cost of £22,000 per flat to replace the cladding itself. The managing agent's trade body has been meeting with government officials this week to try to get that message across. Our reporter Melanie Abbott's been looking into it. Melanie, how have they arrived at these figures then?
Yeah, they're from a survey by the trade body, the Association of Residential Managing Agents. They asked agents managing 37 blocks in England and Wales, high-rise blocks of flats, what they'll have to pay both for cladding and for other essential safety work, because when the cladding's removed, lots of other problems are being uncovered. Nigel Glen from the association says he's been pressing on the Ministry of Housing how important these safety issues are and how expensive.
There are issues inside the building which are nothing to do with cladding. So we're talking compartmentation, where you isolate one flat against another. So if there's a fire in a single flat, it won't spread. We're talking fire breaks, etc., and they could be significant. And of course, we're not just looking at clad buildings. We're looking at across potentially the whole building sector. So this could be, I'm afraid, a very significant issue.
It's unlikely that people are going to want to go searching for these problems, though, isn't it?
They might find it forced upon them because we have legislation coming through. We have insurers wondering what's going on. One of the things we would like to see, and we've asked the government to consider, is doing a sample. So funding going around, let's say, 300 buildings across the public and private sectors and knocking holes in the wall to see how have these been constructed, because that'll give us an idea of the scale of the problem. Are we unlucky that we've just happened to find a few at the moment, or is it more endemic than that?
So, Mel, the government fund that was bumped up to pay for replacing the cladding, it won't cover all of the costs. It won't cover the cost of these underlying problems.
No, that's right. The fund was increased from £1.6 billion to £5 billion last week. But as you say, that's just to replace the cladding on the highest buildings. But even in those buildings, there are some people who've been told that they won't have all the cladding costs covered. Like Anastasia Frost, she's been told that only timber cladding on 2 of the walls on her block in Manchester will be covered.
The other 2 walls have got render and insulation, and although the render would pass in safety inspections, the insulation wouldn't because of the way it's been installed, which we've been told is not covered by the fund at the moment. So we're in the process of appealing that.
What did you think when you were told this news?
I mean, it's just exhausting and frustrating because every time we think we've got a bit of good news, like cladding will be funded, then we also have bad news at the same time.
So, Mel, it's never straightforward, is it? I mean, in that case, then, the cladding fund will only cover the cost of replacing cladding on some of the walls.
It seems so. It's like a horrible game of cheers and tears, isn't it? So that is, of course, unless the appeal is successful. And her managing agents who look after that block, they have said, they've told me they're confident that it will succeed. Now, what is clear in her building, which they will have to pay extra for, is that the fire alarm system is going to have to be extended. They've already paid £5,000 for a new fire alarm that was fitted last year. And now they've been told that it needs to be upgraded. And there's going to have to be fire patrols to check on the safety of the block while that upgrading work is being done. There's government money set aside for fire alarms, but not to pay for these patrols, which are known as a waking watch. And that could be up to another £5,000 per flat.
We need to have more heat sensors in each one of the apartments. They only thought they needed to install them next to the timber cladding. Our waking watch has returned this week until the alarm can be fixed. We're definitely going to have to pay for that as leaseholders because the new Waking Watch fund doesn't cover any Waking Watch costs. It only covers the costs of alarms.
Why do you think it's only now that they're discovering that the other 2 walls are possibly unsafe too, and therefore the heat detectors need to be put in every flat and not just the flats by the timber cladding?
I don't have the answer for that. I think it's poor practice to now learn that we need an additional fire alarm that's just going to cost as much money. Is just outrageous, really.
You're facing a bill potentially in total, with what you've paid already, of almost £10,000.
Yeah, and that doesn't begin to cover any of the internal issues, missing fire breakers, flammable balconies, which will also need rectifying, and neither of those are covered by the fund.
Have you been given an estimate for how much that might cost?
They haven't started on that yet. They're just tackling the cladding and the render for now.
You're having to pay out nearly £10,000 and it could be even more. How are you managing financially?
All our savings have gone towards this, and obviously we can't move right now. We can't sell the flat because it's valueless at the moment, frustrating and stressful. And with COVID, we're having to spend time at home like everyone else, and your home should be where you feel safe. We're given daily updates on how dangerous our home is, so it's stressful.
Anastasia is also expecting a baby in July, so she really hasn't got any spare money. Her managing agents have told me the initial fire alarm system was specified by fire engineers, but after further investigation of the cladding by architects, fire engineers and the fire brigade said the system should be extended. The agents do say they realise this is frustrating, but safety is their first priority.
What did the government say?
Yeah, the Ministry of Housing told us they couldn't comment on individual appeals for money from the Building Safety Fund, but they did add that wherever possible, building owners should meet the cost of all these repairs without passing them on to leaseholders. And they say that this has happened with more than half of the private sector high-rise buildings, which have the same type of cladding as that which was on Grenfell Tower, ACM cladding.
Melanie Abbott, thank you.